Welcome to the Spring Hills Podcast. My name is Garett Elliott. I'm the worship pastor here at Spring Hills, and I am so excited because today we're introducing you to a brand new segment called Beyond the Stage, where we're going to bring in different members of the worship team, and we're going to talk about worship, what it means to us personally, what it means to us as a church. It's really going to be cool. We're going to do an episode every few weeks with different members of the team. Today we have Andrea Burgess, who's one of our vocalists, and Brennan Pryor, who's one of our bassists. So you'll get to know them a little bit. You'll get to hear some of their personal experiences with worshiping through music, how they got started in worship ministry, and a lot more. So check this out. Welcome, everybody, to our very first segment of Beyond the Stage. This is going to be our worship ministry segment where we'll bring in different members from our worship team and also the production team to talk a little bit about worship ministry. Now, today we have two very special guests. We have Andrea Burgess, who is one of our vocalists and worship leaders, and then we also have Brennan Pryor, who is one of our bassists on the worship team. So I brought them in today. We're going to get to know them a little bit and talk a little bit about worship ministry in general, their thoughts and their own experiences with worship ministry and how they got started. So, first off, let me just go ahead and introduce you to Brennan. Brennan, you can say hi now.
Oh, can I now?
Yes.
You were just talking, so I figured I should just let you finish.
And then Andrea, you hear her voice often, mostly singing. She talks sometimes, and then gets her quotes on the quote wall in the green room. So, but this is Andrea. Andrea, you can say hi now.
Hi.
This whole thing is going to be me giving permission and taking permission away.
So much power with one person.
Yeah. So this is going to be our worship segment. We're going to be doing this. I'm not exactly sure the frequency of it yet. We're going to shoot for eventually being once a week with the worship topic. But today we're starting this off. This is called Beyond the Stage, and we're bringing in the worship team and the production team. We'll bring in a few different people from around the production ministry, and we'll talk about worship, what it is. We'll define it. We'll talk about specific questions. Some of you asked some questions on Instagram yesterday, which I will get to as well. So this isn't going to be too
I was curious about that.
I know, me too.
I was like,
yeah, we got some good ones.
That.
We got some good ones. I was excited about the ones we got. Some of them weren't so good. Sorry, people. Some of you need to step up your game. No, they'll make the cut because I want to specifically poke fun at it. So that's something that I'll do a lot too. So one thing that I'd like to have you kind of do is just to introduce who you are, where you're from. It's kind of some basics about you. So let's start with, actually, Andrea, let's start with you. You've just seniority of being here at Spring Hills the longest of the three of us. So
that's true.
Give a little bit of your background, just kind of the general information of who you are, where you're from, that kind of stuff.
So I grew up in Sonoma County in Sebastopol and have lived here most of my life, and then started coming to Spring Hills, I think 6 years ago it's been, and pretty immediately joined the worship team. So I've been doing that since I started coming here. What else do you want to know?
Well, that's good for now. What's your role on the worship team?
I lead worship. I sing.
You're a singer.
Yeah.
You're a vocalist. You can say vocalist. That's okay. That's the good start. Good job. This is Andrea's first time on a podcast, by the way, so she's a little nervous, and our screensaver just went up to take away our notes.
That's helpful.
Brennan, go ahead. Who are you? Where are you from?
Hi. Well, yeah, I'm Brennan. I'm from Tracy, which is kind of the in the valley, really hot, cow town, nothing there. So it's great. I have been at Spring Hills probably for about 2016. Garett, when did you start?
2017. So yeah, Brennan's first week on the worship team was my first week on staff.
Yes, we did the same. So like his first, because it was also your second, I think, leading worship or something like that.
No, it was the first official.
Very first one. Yeah,
first official on staff. I had been here a couple times prior.
Yeah, so that was also.
I actually hadn't met Andrea yet.
Yeah, so that was my first week playing on the worship team as well. So yeah, I think I came here in that fall.
So that would have been
2016?
February 2017 is when we started. So,
yeah, and I was here around because I remember the October event they always have. I forgot the name of it.
The trunk or treat.
Yeah,
thing?
trunk or treat.
Yeah.
So that was like the first event I went to.
Was that the one they had all the cars in the lobby?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard about that.
It was cool.
In the lobby.
Apparently, they rented a bunch of cars from across the street there, the little ones, like the smart
Oh,
cars, and
I
had them in
I
the
didn't
lobby
come to that.
because it was
Yeah.
raining or something.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
It's one of the classic
Yeah.
Kiki Ashley,
Yeah.
pivots where it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I think
They're
I might be
brilliant
giving
at
them
that.
way too much credit right now,
No,
but
they
it sounds
deserve
like
that credit. Yeah.
it sounds like something they would do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was fun.
Good.
Yeah. So yeah, been here since then. I've been in the area. I started coming here for school back in 2013, and then just kind of stayed after school for work and things like that. So, yeah. And like Garett said, I play bass. So I've always played bass since I was in high school. My dad got me into it. So he was a worship leader as well.
What about worship ministry in general? What was your start in worship ministry?
Yeah, so it was my home church back in Tracy, which was like a really small team. I think it was my dad leading worship with the guitar and vocals. I was on bass. We had a drummer sometimes, and other times we had someone on the bongos.
This is why
Yes,
Brett was the perfect pastor to plant a church, because he's a drummer.
Exactly.
And that's one of the hard.
It's important.
Ironically, we have a surplus of drummers
Yeah.
here at Spring
That's
Hill.
It's
true.
weird.
Mhm.
And our poor drummers sometimes just don't get to play for a while because the scheduling doesn't work out. But yeah, continue.
Yeah. So I started there, and then in college, I was a part of this really great Christian organization called InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, and they have their own like worship team for the services they do on campus, and so I was a part of that one as well.
Right.
So,
That's
but yeah,
cool. It's a cool ministry, InterVarsity. If you don't know what InterVarsity is and you're a college student, check it out.
Yeah.
Is it on all campuses?
It's on most campuses.
Most campuses,
Yeah,
okay.
but you can always find out and see.
And your
so.
your wife Jessica is is she the director? What's her?
So
role?
she's an assistant director of Greek InterVarsity, which specifically is aimed towards fraternity and sorority students.
Sweet.
So there's kind of like two different
Cool.
branches of it. Yeah, and so she works in kind of the national branch of that. So it's pretty cool.
Cool.
Mhm.
And then Andrea, what about you? Just worship ministry in general. What was your start with singing?
I have been singing since I can remember. I would sing with my mom. I always sang at church. And then she grew up traveling with her family. Her father was an evangelist, and they would sing. So it's just always been something that I've done, and but like wasn't necessarily worship. You know what I mean? So, but I was doing it at church. That's where I started. And then we had a really good, at my church growing up, like children's program. Like we would do musicals and stuff like that.
That's
so
cool.
that was it. Yeah, it was so fun. So that was something that I did. And then like high school worship team, and that's when I started like working with a band
Okay.
and leading worship.
Cool. Right on. And then instruments, as far as what Brennan, you're the bass player here, one of the bass players, but would you play any other instruments?
I don't. I did buy a banjo a couple years ago.
Nice.
Which I like
Dude,
picked up.
you're talking my language. No, so a fun fact, Brennan and I are from the same area.
We are.
We're the 209ers.
209.
Now, there's a few of us here. It's kind of strange that it ended up working out this way, just because we're not that we're not that close. I mean, like, it's, 2 hours away to Tracy?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So 2.5,
Yeah.
3 to Turlock, which is where I'm from. But when I got here and started getting everybody's phone numbers, there was like 3 209 numbers, and I was like, wait a second.
I've actually found a lot of people from the Valley, from the 209 specifically, come up to Santa Rosa.
Why
Runner
wouldn't
Park.
you?
Yeah,
It's
why
so
wouldn't
nice
you?
up here.
It
I think
is.
part of it's
Until
the
the-
weather.
Until it started
Welcome.
burning down.
Well, yeah, that's an unforeseen
That's true, yeah.
downside.
I'll blame that on me, since it was the year that I moved here.
It's definitely your fault.
That feels right.
Yeah. So yeah, you got your banjo, which is a very, very Central Valley instrument.
Very. And so I picked it up a couple years ago and set it down almost like immediately. Like it was very hard. And it's been sitting under my bed collecting dust for the last few years, but I picked it up again this past week, and I'm like determined now, especially with
Yes.
COVID. I'm determined.
Bring it down here sometime, and I can show you a couple little tricks on how to
That
get
would be-
started with
that-
it.
that would be
I'm not
great.
great at the
Yes.
banjo, but I can get you started on it. Andrea, do you play any other instruments besides your? Do you play?
I
any other-
play my voice.
Play my
Play
voice.
your
I
voice.
play my voice. I play the piano. I just don't play it in front of people.
We don't know why though.
Yeah,
Every
why-
time
why
I
don't
ask
you?
Andrea,
Oh,
hey,
'cause-
how's this key for this song? She'll send me a video or an audio or whatever of you
Yeah.
playing the piano and singing, and I'm like, you're good at the piano. I don't know why you
Wait,
don't play.
don't you have like videos of you playing on Instagram?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I just started doing that during quarantine because
So-
I felt that people needed some encouragement.
So you do play in
and
front
my
of people.
piano's really out of tune. Yeah, I guess so, but it feels like it's by myself because I'm by myself.
There's something really endearing about an out-of-tune piano. I don't know what it is.
There kind of is, huh?
I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's like
and one
nostalgic.
of the keys is like broken. Like, anyway, so
Oh.
I know.
How old is your piano?
It's as old
Oh, wait, or you have
as
kids.
I am. How old is my piano? What did you ask? Is that what you asked me?
No. I said, how old is your piano? Because you said it's broken.
Oh,
But then I realized you also have kids,
Yes,
so
I have
really it
kids.
doesn't. So
Yeah.
kids can break
Yes,
things.
a
that-
kid
I see that
did
logic
break
now.
this.
Okay,
Yeah,
I didn't.
yeah.
I didn't mess up my words. I was meaning what I said. Okay, and then Spring Hills Worship. Just a couple other basic questions here. What's been your favorite part of being part of Spring Hills Worship Ministry?
I really love being on a team. And so I think the connection with people, whether it's in the green room or actually on stage while we're worshiping, or even during practice too, like you really get to know people and I love the idea of like doing this thing together and worshiping, and then that the Spirit is also connecting us to each other. It's really special.
Yeah, I think you form relationships so much quicker when you're playing worship music with people. And I think that like it's really fun because you get to know people. Like I only see people on the worship team twice, a month as far as like just really close interactions, but you build those relationships so quick, which is really cool. And as far as like events goes, because I know in our notes you put like Christmas is like your favorite. I love Citywide.
Citywide's fun.
Citywide is probably my favorite event we do the whole year.
I love that too.
And I think just getting all the people together for worship is just so, it's just like the energy.
There's something about
so
it that
real.
really is special. And
Yeah.
we did Citywide. For those of you that don't know what the Citywide worship nights are, we've done 2 of them now where we've brought, I think we have 6 or 7 churches represented in the worship team.
Mm-hmm.
And we do, Andrew, you haven't sang in that yet, huh?
I haven't.
You
because
need
we
to.
can't stack it with
It's
just
so many
Spring Hills
people.
people. We're
That's
trying
true,
to
yeah.
together.
We need a group.
So, and we needed a bassist this last time, so I had to. You've done it both times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
cool.
it's really cool though, because we get, there's 5 or 6 different vocalists. We all lead a song or 2. We're all from different churches, and then we get. I think we had like 1,300 people here last summer.
It's super cool.
And it's fun to see all these churches together and worshiping together. It really is. It's a cool experience. I told Caitlin after the 2018 one, it might have been the most fun I had on stage to that point.
I believe
100%.
that.
So yeah, those big events are fun. Okay, so let's do this. Let's jump into some of our worship topics now. And I want to know from you two specifically, what are some of the most challenging things and some of the most rewarding things about being part of the worship ministry here at Spring Hills?
I think one of the big things I find really challenging is not getting so swept up in the performance of things or even just the fun of things, because the worship has a point, like there's a purpose to it. So we're not just doing it for the fun of it.
Not just to sound good.
Right, not just to sound good, but it's really easy to be like, hey, well I'm sounding really good right now. And like this is the best I've ever played this song. And so it's really easy to get caught up in the like, yeah, I'm performing so well right now. And then you have to think, wait, that's not why I'm up here. And so you really have to kind of keep yourself in check. And that's a constant thing. I don't know for you guys, but for me, it's a very constant, like, this is really fun. And then I'm like, okay, wait, I got to remember.
What are we
And,
doing?
like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? So it is a challenge. It really is.
Yeah. I think for me, the most rewarding thing is when somebody, although I appreciate it, like comes up and says, oh, I love it when you sing, or I love your voice, or whatever. Like that is very nice, a nice compliment. But when somebody says,
I don't get that compliment very much.
Yeah, me either.
Brennan, really? But when somebody says like that song that you led, or the way that you did it, or like when they really are experiencing worship, or they're moved by the Spirit because I'm being a vessel that he's working through, like that's the most rewarding thing to me, because that's the point.
Yeah, the compliments that come to us sometimes when it's like, somebody the other day had just on Instagram or something messaged me, and it was someone from our church that just said, we really appreciate the way that you guys lead worship, because it's not, we can tell this isn't a performance for you guys, which is really, that's one of the best compliments we could get, just because it's like, yeah, we are up here for the reason to lead our congregation in worshiping God, not in praising us for what we're doing. So I want to ask you this question, and the reason I want to ask it is because I have a very specific answer myself, and I'm excited to share that. So the question that I have for you is, do you remember the first time that you worshiped God through music?
I don't know if it's the first time, but an experience I remember is being in high school, and we were in kind of like a smaller room, and during worship, and I was in the back, which actually, when I'm not leading, I kind of like to be in the back of like the group of people that's worshiping, so I can just, I don't know, I feel like I'm by myself, but also with a group of people, and it feels like a very special time of worship for me. Yeah. So I think that's when I realized it. I was like in the back, sitting cross-legged on top of a table or something like that. Like super, yeah, I don't know why. And I just remember thinking like, oh, maybe this is what heaven's like a little bit, you know?
Oh,
like,
cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I also have a specific time, but there was a good year, like a year-long span of time in junior college where God was really working on my heart. And this was before I really like truly dedicated my life to him. But during this year-long period of time, I was driving to my junior college every day or every other day. And my junior college was about half an hour away from where I lived. So I had a good like commute.
Did you go to MJC?
No, I went to Las Positas in Livermore. And so I would drive over the Altamont every day, and I was listening to a lot of worship music during that time. And I think that was really where I got a lot of that feeling of really worshiping. And that was always really funny because it really was by myself. And I've always been one of those people who are a little bit embarrassed being very like vulnerable and open about how I worship. So being able to be in the car by myself, no one else around, and really just like letting go with worship was really good. And I think that really taught me a lot about worshiping through music.
So my experience took place after high school. There was this time where I felt like my whole life was crashing down on top of me, mostly due to my own decisions. They weren't necessarily poor decisions. They just didn't work out the way I'd planned. So my senior year, I'd been offered scholarships for basketball at a few different NCAA D2 and D3 schools, and a few NAIA D2 schools, but I really wanted to play at Azusa Pacific. I knew they played at a higher level. I'd wanted to play there all through high school. So I'd done workouts with them, and I really fit in well with their style, and I felt like I could see a future in that program for me. But the thing was, if I went in as a freshman, I'd likely just be playing behind the three upperclassmen, wouldn't be getting a whole lot of playing time. I'd be getting like the minimum scholarship. I think it was $2,500 for the year, which really doesn't make too much of a dent in like the $35,000 price tag. So I decided to stay in my hometown, play at a junior college where I knew I'd be a starter. I'd improve my game. I'd pay very little for tuition. And then after a year or two, I'd make my way to Azusa, hopefully get a better scholarship.
Yeah.
I'd have junior college experience, and I'd get lots of playing time, or I'd be at least be able to fight for playing time. Well, the junior college ended up being a really, really bad fit in just about every way possible. Ultimately, my coach suggested that I redshirt, which essentially means I practice with the team but don't play in any games, which then wouldn't cost me a year of eligibility. So I told the coach that I planned to transfer after a year or two. I didn't want to stay in junior college for a third year. And after that, I just was put in his doghouse. I went from being a starter to being on the bench. So I ended up dropping out of MJC, took a semester off. My friends had all moved. I was basically stuck in my hometown, or felt stuck in my hometown. I didn't have the one thing that I had been so familiar with during the fall and winter months, which was basketball. That was what I had always done. My life basically just revolved around basketball. And now all of a sudden, here I am, not on a team, which is really weird for me. And I really started to struggle with my own joy, trying to find where my joy was. But during that semester time was the time where it was like, I'm not in school now because I dropped out of college, which already was really scaring my parents, even though I had plans to go back.
Sure.
I was already in motion of doing that. I was working full time. All my friends were gone. Yeah. And so it was just this really lonely feeling. Mm-hmm. And so there was a time where I went to our college group. My dad was a pastor at a church since the time he's been a pastor in ministry my whole life, youth pastor, worship pastor. But at this point, he'd been at this church for a long time. The college group was going. And I went down there, I wasn't friends. I knew everybody because I grew up at this church, but I wasn't really friends with any of them beyond just like, hey, what's up, man? And I show up to this place, sat in the back. I always sit in the back because I'm tall. I don't like being in front of people. But I was watching the worship team, and there was one person specifically on the worship team where it was this person that I would say is like this really outgoing, kind of a popular person. And I was watching this person worship, and I'm like, this doesn't even look like him, like how he's worshiping right now. And I started thinking about this. Now, I'd played in worship teams in high school and stuff like that, but there was this moment of like realizing I'm missing the point here. I've been looking at it like you were saying, like how fun it is to play music, be with a team. And this guy was sitting there kind of in the back. I mean, he was sort of isolated on his own back in the back corner. And I just kind of watched him, just like he sort of turned. He was almost not facing the wall behind him, but kind of turned away from everybody. And you could tell he was just having this real like moment of worship, like legitimately, genuinely worshiping God. And it just got me thinking. Then I started to listen to these worship songs and really started to focus on the words of them rather than like the melody and the music. And it was there was a kind of, this is so strange that it's like this one moment, but I remember one moment of a song, and it's a song that I can't find it anywhere because it was the worship leader at Azusa. So that started, a couple months of me really listening to worship music and listening to the lyrics. And I remember sitting in the congregation of our chapel, and the worship leader was singing a song he wrote. And he said something super simple in the song, which is, "Glory to the King of love, you're lifted high above. Great are you in all your ways, you'll never be replaced." And it got me thinking of like, what in my life do I replace? Do I put in God's place? And then the song, Jesus, Son of God, on the altar of our praise, let there be no higher name. And it was those two songs back to back of like, what am I putting on the altar of praise? What am I putting higher above God? And I just started realizing I put a lot above God. And it really felt like God was like one of those like, yeah, you dummy.
Yeah.
Like, finally, I've been working on this for 19 years with you, and you're finally starting to understand this. And it really was like that moment of like, oh, and I look back and I go, man, I was so dumb because I was just thinking like, I wasn't open to it. Like, I was just like, oh, it's music. It's kind of boring. Worship music. My dad was a worship pastor. That music is boring, Dad. And hey, but that's okay. I'll help you on the guitar this weekend.
Right.
And just stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then finally it was like, oh, I get it now. Like we're praising a God that is so big and so mighty and so powerful. We deserve none of the love that he gives us.
Sure.
And yet it's still more love than we'll ever be able to understand. And it was like, oh, I get it now.
That's
and
the
now
point
I'm worshiping God for everything he is and everything he does. And I don't want it just to be in this moment. I want this to be what my lifestyle is now. So that was kind of my first, that specifically those back-to-back songs at a chapel at Azusa. So
did that bring you like into relationship with the Lord, like in a way that you never had experienced before?
Definitely.
Is that,
Definitely.
like that light bulb kind of?
It was, so I was a good Christian kid. Like I had a relationship with God. I was not a crazy kid. Like I believed, I was in small groups, I was interested, I was very serious about, I was very serious about my faith and about just being my friends and I, we made, we were all holding each other accountable for things. And sure, we screwed up here and there, but like we held each other accountable to a lot of things. And it was kind of, I look back at it and I go, I'm so thankful for that small group because I really know myself again, like those guys at the junior college. I would have ended up being a partier and gone off the rails in high school if it wasn't for these guys kind of being like, no, we're not going to go to parties, man. That's not what we're going to do. So I never did that. And I think that was God kind of protecting me from all of that, knowing that if I go too deep, I don't know if I'm coming back.
Yeah,
that's so me too. That is so me.
Well, this is going to lead to one of our questions that we got, which is Enneagram numbers. And you and I are the same Enneagram numbers. Anyways, we'll get to that a little bit later.
Good.
All right. So as we're getting started with Beyond the Stage, our new worship ministry segment, I think it's important that we define what worship is and what it accomplishes, because I think there's this common misconception that worship is only happening when we're gathering together at church and singing together. And don't get me wrong, that is worship, but that's not the only time that worship is happening. So let's go ahead and define worship, what it accomplishes. I think it's important to do that because when I was growing up, I really didn't have that distinction that worship was happening every day. There were things that, as I've already talked about, were on my altar of praise that were higher than God. I was worshiping things without even realizing it. So let's define worship. What is it, and what does worship accomplish?
Yeah, well, I think, excuse me. I think worship is really this act of kind of lifting something up. So it's taking something, and that's I think where the danger of worshiping the wrong thing can get, because you can take anything and you can worship that thing. So you can be one of these people who is so like in love with their job and they worship their job, right? So it's like they're placing it above everything else in their life.
And it's not bad to love your job.
No.
Right.
Thanks, Garett.
No, I'm being serious though, because like a lot of times I think I know I've had conversations with people where they actually feel convicted over over loving something that's not God.
Sure.
And it's like, well, just it's okay to love things.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and I know,
proper
and
order.
I think it'll be something we talk about in a minute too, because I know it's on our notes. But like there's definitely like a healthy love of things, and that's good to have. I think where worship comes in is putting it above everything else, and so then you can easily worship the wrong things. So when it comes to worshiping God, it's really placing Him above everything that we're doing.
Yeah.
And that's why it doesn't have to be in just music, because it's one of these things that you can worship through any number of ways.
Right.
And I think really also it's also kind of an act of kind of giving God what is God's, which is like the praise. And kind of like where knowing what happens in our lives and all the good things that happen, being able to attribute all those things to God and what He's doing in our lives. And so I think really focusing on that and lifting that up is, I think, really the purpose of worship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's very important to know God, know His character in order to worship Him, because otherwise it is just singing a song. If you don't actually have a relationship or know who it is you're singing to or worshiping, as far as in music. And it's easy for people to get swept up in the emotions of it, or that worship songs are pretty much written to kind of build emotion. They always build and they get big and then they, and so it's easy to think that you're worshiping in music and not actually be worshiping. And then like worshiping throughout your life. I read a book, maybe a couple years ago called Celebration of Discipline. I don't really like discipline or like being still or like any of those things, but it talks about that, like the different ways that we worship the Lord in obedience to His word. And even in one of the things that really struck me was like the guy said, go outside and like observe nature and watch a bug and like really watch it and look at it and see what it's doing. And I'm like, but I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I did as a kid. That's what I did that stuff all the time. And like that's actually an act of worship. I mean, and I would never just choose to go do that today, like watch a bug. But if I realize that it's like, no, I'm like observing what God has created and I'm in His creation and I'm just being still and watching it, like that's an act of worship. I think that's really cool.
Well, and I really love what you said too about people who sometimes can think they're worshiping when they're not. But I also think that can be switched around too, in the sense that people feel like they can only worship when they feel like it, right? Like they see worship as like, oh, I feel so worshipful right now. But I think it can really be lost that it's an action, right? So even when you're not feeling like it, you can still worship. And I think that's a big thing, because a lot of people will go to church and maybe they're in a place where they're having a lot of hardships and they're like, I just don't feel like worshiping right now. Like I don't feel anything from the song. And it's like, well, I think there's something deeper you have to look at and kind of like, what's your action and intention behind it? So yeah.
And to just do it anyway.
Yeah.
Like even when you don't feel it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I forget how this was said. I just remember hearing this at one point, just being like really kind of irritated when people are like, I didn't really like worship today.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, that wasn't for you.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I mean, I want our church to enjoy the time that we have worshiping through music, but at the same time, it's not about them. And the whole point of what we're doing is to point everybody to God. And we get into this a lot later. Just if we're really bad, it's distracting. And if stuff's not working, it's distracting. And people are going to get taken out of worship. And Brett has done a really great job over the last couple years with me, helping me understand things that take him out of worship.
Yeah.
And he said, it's different for everybody. And so there's no way we're going to have, the 1,500 people here on a weekend and every single person is going to be like, hey, that hit the spot today.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen that way.
Yeah.
But it starts with where the posture of your own heart is. And if we're starting in that spot where we're all up on this stage, we're worshiping God, and you know what? The soundboard freezes, which has happened numerous times.
Yeah.
And it's the most awkward 3 minutes of my life when that happens.
Totally.
And I hate that it happens. But there's still a moment there where I go, Jesus didn't have a sound system when he was
Right.
when he was going around and speaking. And
Mm-hmm.
when David was writing these Psalms, he didn't have a microphone and speakers. Like, it's okay that we're worshiping without
Yeah.
the microphone and speakers right now. Now, granted, in no way do I want to experience the soundboard freezing like that again. But just understanding that, like, there's this point where you just have to make sure you're starting at, you have the right foundation, right?
Yeah.
Have the right foundation, then build off of that.
Well, and I do think it's important, and I just want to say this before we move on. I also want to highlight too that, like, it's not just we use a lot of language of like, oh, them, it's not for you, but it's also the
Sure.
same for us.
Oh yeah,
Because
yeah.
when we're on stage, it's like
Right.
doubly true. There's so many times where I've listened to a song and been like, yeah, I just don't really like that one.
Yep.
But then I have to be like, well, that's not the point. So you
Right.
need to still
Yeah.
worship with that.
Yeah.
So
I think I've told you numerous times where it's like, I mean, because we have spent a lot of time together on the
Yeah.
weekends, right?
Yes.
We're back here a lot, and we have a lot of conversations. And sometimes somebody will say, "Hey, I looked right at Andrea when I said that." But I'm not saying Andrea says this, but yeah, I'm kind of over that song, and
I've said that a lot.
but it's to a point where, like, I'm like, yeah, I am too. And what do we
Right.
need to do now that we're kind of over the song? Because
Sure.
this was something I wrote down on here too. By the time the weekend is over, we have listened to a song, we have practiced it, we have on our own, and then practiced it together, and then played it for 4 services. So we have played and listened to this song somewhere probably between 15 and 20 times
Yeah.
that week.
Mm-hmm.
And our congregation has heard it once,
Yeah.
if they were there.
Yeah.
Right.
And then if we do that song next week, and then a lot of people only come to church every other week, right? Someone's heard it the first time, and we've now heard this song 30 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is very easy to get kind of like, all right, I'm over this.
Mhm.
Now, God has blessed me with this magical gift to not get tired of songs very, very easily.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is because I used to get tired of songs really easy, worship songs specifically, and I really started to refocus on different parts of the song.
Yeah.
And so I think I know there was a time where we would come into the green room, no instruments or anything, and we would just sing the song a cappella together.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it was awkward and it was weird, and people that don't sing are singing.
Yeah.
And it was like kind of uncomfortable, but it was really causing you to focus on what you were singing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was, even as singers, speaking for myself here, it was awkward for me, but we were singing This Is Amazing Grace, which is probably the song we've sang the most in the last 5
yeah.
years, right?
Yeah.
And thinking about the lyrics of that song of this is amazing grace, this is unending love, that you take my place, you would bear my cross, you'd lay down your life. And I'm just like thinking, like, this isn't some boring song.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
what this is singing about is a miracle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's like, how dare I look at these lyrics and go, I'm over this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, like, and I
Mhm.
get it. Like, the music can get repetitive and people can be like, all right, freshen it up, do something new. But at the same time, it's like, but that's the gospel
truth.
that's
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
sang right
Mhm.
here. It's truth
Mhm.
that we're singing, and it's an amazing truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's celebrate that, regardless of if you're going to hear da na 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 da na for the 9,000th
Yeah.
time. You know,
Yeah.
yeah. So with my definition of worship, I think of it with this also. I mean, it's ascribing worth and showing reverence, but I like the idea that worship is a whole life response to God's glory.
Mm-hmm.
And so worshiping God in other ways that aren't music, and you, like you said, Brennan, you said maybe you're not even noticing that you're worshiping. Maybe looking at a bug, you didn't even notice that you were.
do that this
you know,
afternoon.
Yes,
Probably-
that's my afternoon
Yeah.
activity now.
But it made me think. My son, who's 4, we got him a telescope, and we've been going outside looking at the moon
Ooh,
and
I
at
love
stars.
that.
And
cool.
even though, like, I very honestly, the times we've done that haven't every time just been like, oh my gosh, God's creation is amazing. I have a couple times, and I really think like his wonder and like, oh my goodness, like the moon is so big.
Yeah.
And then like understanding that the moon doesn't actually light up, but it's reflecting the sun's light, and like his understanding of everything, and he's just marveling in this like that is so cool. And I'm like, and God created that. Like he's not boring. God is not boring.
No.
He's very creative. And this is an amazing thing that we're looking at. And it does make me think just like the certain songs that sing about, I mean, Cannons is one of them, right? Like it talks about the stars and stuff like that. The moon and the stars declare who you are. And it's like, that's amazing to me that you look around the universe and you're like, all of this stuff that God created is literally declaring who God is, his majesty, his greatness, and his creativity, which is just phenomenal to me, especially as like, you know, musicians. Creativity is, I look at it and I go, how did he think of this with us? Even just like the human body.
Sure.
I'm like,
oh, totally.
The fact that we can play instruments and that we can vocalize in harmony and melody, you know, I don't know, it's just fascinating.
No, it is.
Yeah, it's
so
beautiful.
Let's move to that then, worshiping in all you do. So Colossians 3:17, whatever you do in word or deed, do it in the name of Jesus. And then in Psalm 34, David writes, I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise will continually be on my mouth. So how can we make things that are just like everyday, possibly mundane things an act of worship?
Well, when I was a kid and I'd make my bed and it wasn't, you know, up to my mom's standards, she would remind me that everything I do is for the Lord.
Right, right.
You know, and I'm like, ugh.
And this is where pursue excellence comes from.
Yes. Yeah, but it's true, but it's always stuck with me. And I like to work. I like, as soon as I could get a job, I got a job, and I took it very seriously. Like, I'm doing this for the Lord, you know? And so it shouldn't be like, oh, today I'm going to go out and tell people about Jesus. It should just be a part of my day every day.
Be Jesus.
It should be, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, reflect who he is.
Yeah. Yes. And the only way I can do that is spending time with him. And then when you start from that place, it's kind of a natural thing to just worship through your work or your parenting or your whatever.
This is what Brett said about mowing the lawn when he was younger, when he became a Christian in high school.
Yeah.
And he said one of the first things that his dad noticed about the change that has happened is how well he was cutting the grass.
That's right. Yeah.
Which starts to explain why Brett loves the lawn out here,
really
right? And he's excited about
grass,
church on the lawn because he's very proud of it, you know, like, and it's because he was showing, he was pursuing excellence in everything that he was doing, which is such a cool story to hear from somebody who was a high school kid that became a Christian after not growing up in a Christian home where it was preached to him all the time, where it just, something changed in him that was just like, I'm going to do this better. And I'm going to do this well.
And that's the thing too, is that if you're told to do those things, then it's more of a legalistic thing.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, I'm following the rules and doing this thing. But if it comes from a place of worship, then it's, you know, like, then it is actual excellence.
Right.
And it is pleasing to the Lord because you're just wanting to please him. It's not like checking things off the list because you have to.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, it's dangerous when you're checking stuff off a list.
Yeah.
Well, and we even talked about with worship having the right posture. But I think even with like you're talking about having that posture of like, it seems kind of silly of like, yeah, let's do these things every day. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm doing that for Jesus. But I think when you have the posture of worship, that's where you really start to see that.
Yeah.
And I think the best, I love the example of like using your job or worshiping through your job.
Yeah.
Just because I think it's so applicable to everybody. But I think it's just like especially when you're working in a job that doesn't have any connection at all to the church or to Jesus or anything, and being able to, I think, kind of exemplify him through how you're just working, is a big deal. And
it has an impact on people.
It does. It has an impact, and people notice. And that's what you know when you're really starting to like, I'm doing this in a worshipful manner, is when people start saying like, there's something different. And I don't really know what it is, but I can like tell there's something different, and that's usually how a lot of that is.
And it can be in the polar opposite, have a negative effect. If you're kind of a jerk at work,
Uh-huh.
because you don't like your job or
Yep.
something, and people are like, yeah, that guy's kind of a tool.
Yeah.
And then you go, oh, he's on the worship team at a
Yeah.
church. Wow, I don't want to be around those people.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's just like that automatically has now made that person not want to be not just around the church in general and people in the church, but God.
Yeah.
Because we're reflecting. There's that song, Phil Wickham song, that it's, if you're the sun, I want to be the moon. I want to
Yeah.
reflect the love that you're
Mhm.
showing to me. I want to reflect it. I mean, so it could have a polar opposite effect too. And if you are in genuine relationship with God, it
Yeah.
shines through, and
Yeah.
you can see it's
Yeah.
just like, I mean, there's a change. I have a friend who, I grew up with him, and he grew up coming to church. His family didn't, but he was, coming to youth group with me and stuff, and we'd hang out. And he wasn't like rejecting God, but he wasn't really searching for it either. He was kind of just like, oh, who's going to be there? Oh, okay, yeah, I'll go. That sounds fun. It was a social thing for him, right? And it was sort of like, he was kind of this quiet, almost, I don't want to say depressed, but he was a very like monotone behavior, pretty just like not super joyful in everything he
Yeah.
was doing. And then when we were in high school, he became a Christian, and it was like there was this thing that just changed in him, and you could tell there was just joy in his life, and everything when he was around, you could just tell he was changed. And it was so cool
That's
to
so
see this
cool.
kid, I mean, 15, 16 years old, just his life changed. And I mean, I still talk to him to this day. He's still in church, and he's serving, and he's got a job that in my own personality would be torture for me, but he loves it, and he loves the people he's around. He doesn't work around a bunch of Christians, so he's just he's an awesome witness to these people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's really cool to see how that relationship with Christ had changed him.
I was going to say joy is a huge
Mhm.
difference, I think, because so many people are complaining
Oh, I
Yeah.
know.
all day about their
And it's
job
hard
or
not
whatever.
to.
It's hard not to. And there's something like it's easy to just start doing that too when you're around it. And I think our language in general is really important too in our worship. So what's in James, it says like cursing and blessing can't come out of the same mouth. Like that's true. So whether that's gossiping at work, because that's super easy to
Right.
do,
Sure,
or
yeah.
like whatever it is, it's to be joyful and to be kind with our words, and is a huge testimony.
When you
to-
guys have gotten to know me well enough to know, like, when we're together as a worship team, if there starts to be something negative,
Yeah.
it really eats at me, because
Yeah.
I don't want to focus on the negative at all. I don't want to. It's not like I don't want to be aware of it. Like if something needs to be fixed, I want to be aware of it, but I don't want to just hone in on it
And dwell on it.
And then you can even see when it's like there's somebody that has something negative to say, and it's obviously we're not perfect. So, and
Sure.
I've been that one too. I think it was the morning when the soundboard wouldn't turn on.
Yeah.
well,
I think you both were there,
stressful.
right?
I think so.
And
Yeah.
Yes,
every
yeah.
now and then you guys have seen my stressness. What is that? Stress,
Level.
anxiety.
Yeah.
whatever it is, come out, and I become very harsh and really negative and kind of mean. And it's like, I hate that
I
side
don't
of
see
me.
that, but
Well, yeah.
but okay.
You know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
though. A
Yeah.
different side of
Yeah.
me kind of comes out where you can kind of see, like, I get a little quieter.
Yes.
I get, I'm not smiling.
Things aren't
I'm not
funny anymore.
Goofing
Yeah, things aren't
around.
funny
I'm
anymore.
not
Yeah.
laughing. I'm not being sarcastic, which is something that I do
All the time.
constantly. And it's like people go, "Ooh, this," and it's awkward. It's a little bit like this situation where you're like, I. It's like a kind of like car accident. Like I can't look away, but I don't want to look at
It's
this.
definitely noticeable for sure.
So yeah, worshiping and all that we do, the job that you're doing. Now, Brennan, you're not a parent yet, but you'll be a parent at some point. So Caitlin and I, my wife Caitlin, we talk about what it's like to just be godly parents and worshiping through your job. And for her right now, her primary job is being a mother, and she has a full-time job also, but with the coronavirus stuff going on, she's not working as much. And so she's looking at her job as a parent, and she's constantly asking herself and asking God, how do I do this how do I reflect Christ in my job as a parent? So I'll ask specifically, Andrea, do you have any thoughts on this of parenting being an act of worship?
Well, I have realized that they're watching everything I do,
Right.
which is a lot
Scary.
of pressure. So, like even during this time, this whole like being quarantined, that whole thing, stay in place, whatever. It was important for me to tell them, no, you can't come in my room right now. Like for me to have space where I could be with the Lord, because I realized, they're with me all the time now, and I'm not getting like that time in the Word, and I'm so super impatient, like just in general, even when I've spent time with the Lord, but it's just a little less, like that's something I have to pray for constantly, is to be patient. And so for me, I cannot do it if I am not like starting my day with the Lord. I just can't. I will be a terrible parent. So that's kind of like really the thing I try to cling to, is like reminding myself that I'm not going to do it perfectly, and that they see the good things and the bad things that I do, but that if I can acknowledge the things that I've done wrong and apologize, I think that's a really important thing in parenting, is apologizing
totally.
for what I do wrong. And they're like the sweetest, they're always like, oh, it's okay. Oh, I love you. And I'm like, so they teach me as much as I teach them, but yeah, just trying to be, or like inviting them into like an actual musical worship moment with me, instead of kind of shooing them away, stuff like that.
So I want to talk a little bit about the differences between the benefits of private worship and corporate worship. So just some thoughts that you have on the differences and the benefits between those two.
Yeah, I mean, I think that private worship is really interesting, because we talked about already how worship can look like anything.
Right.
Private worship is even more of like a specific thing to each individual, just because it's going to be internal a lot of times. I mean, you can externalize it as well, but a lot of times it can be internal, and I think that's where a lot of people come from, and especially in the church culture that we have, there's a lot of people who do like to they prefer an internal form of worship. And so that's always a little bit different, because there's some people who you see who are very like open and with their worship, and that's great. And then you see people who aren't as open with it, and it really is more internal, and that's awesome too. So I think being able to kind of understand, what your own personal private worship really looks like. But I do think there is something really important about corporate worship, and I think a balance of the two is really impactful. So you don't want to always just have private worship, because you can even learn from people in their worship as well. And so I think it's really important to have like a balance between the two. So.
Yeah, and in Matthew 18, 2 or 3, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am with them. I think that's such a great just summary of the importance of corporate worship, of being together. And it's not 200 or 300, it's 2 or 3 gather in my name. And then more than that, great. But when 2 people are praying with each other, doing a devotional together, it's really it's really glorifying to God, because we're not, as we've seen a lot, just being shelter in place and a lot of people being isolated and stuff. We're not created to be isolated. So like if you just tried to completely be on your own, your private worship, that's great. But it's so important, and this is one of the reasons Brett did this series that he did a couple weeks ago. He ended it was The Church is Essential, is because of this. Like we need each other. We need to be worshiping with each other. This is why it's so difficult for me right now to hear that singing is being banned indoors for church. And it's really so discouraging to me, because I'm just like, but come on. But I want to, that's the feeling that I get. And then at the same time, I'm like, you know what? God's given us this amazing property with the resources to be able to do these services outside. And we're so blessed right now that we get to do this, where we get to stand together out on that lawn and worship. And I'm so grateful for that. And because I've been craving that. Now we have been fortunate to be able to be recording on stage with 7 or 8 of us, which is really
cool.
I mean, that's a cool experience. And I think it's actually, I'm going to do another one probably in a month or so. When this is all over, but we don't know when this is all going to be over, but I really want to talk about, kind of the changes that made in my own worship life, the recording and the empty room, empty chairs, and then just being with this group of 6, 7 people on stage and worshiping, and the way that I think it really out of the frustration that we had to do it that way came a bigger appreciation and understanding for what we get to do, what the privilege we have that we're doing. So yeah.
Well, I think even with this whole stay-at-home sort of situation that we've had for the last few months, I'm kind of somebody who likes to look on the bright side of things.
Yeah.
But I think even in the topic of private worship, I've been able to, like, I find worship in even just playing an instrument. Even if it's not necessarily a worship song, because I just think that being able to play an instrument and using that gift that God has given me, for me is worship. So I've been able to work on that and practice things at home myself, or even like I said, pull out that banjo and try that a little bit. And even a little bit of that feels worshipful to me. For my wife, she's a painter, so she's been painting a ton, especially the last month or two. And I don't know for her if that's worshipful. I would think it probably is. But it's just being able to take the opportunity with the resources and the situation we're currently in, and be like, all right, how do I use this to its benefit? You know, how do I find worship in that? So I think, like, it is discouraging to be like, oh man, we can't meet in the same way we were, and it's probably going to be a while before we can. But there's a lot of different ways you can still use the time as like, no, this can still be worship, even if it's a little bit different than I'm used to.
Right. So I was without going too far into detail, I was really going through some personal issues at the beginning of all this, and it started. My dad had a heart attack at the end of February, middle of February, and it kind of had this chain reaction of my own some health struggles that I was having, and it all kind of stemmed from when I broke my back years ago, and it's just been kind of this ongoing. What are we in 2020? So 6 years of these back issues, and I was really struggling with some things, and having the consistent group that was here. The 6-7 people that were in here, we were praying together. It was over Easter where it was really like coming to a head for me, really being stressed out and like very emotional. And having the people around me, I think, completely saved me. Like I was the people that were here, and I've actually probably, Andrea, you don't know this, I've given you more credit than I think that you probably even realize because of you being around for the last 14 weeks or whatever, because of you wanting to have fun. And you bring lightening the mood and like making jokes, and like I feel like I can be sarcastic around you. And like there was this one point where I've told the story too many times now, where Andrea and I, when we're on camera, where I had asked her if she could let me know if my collar's popping up from my guitar strap, or just let me know if I look stupid in general. And then mid-song, you know, I've got these back issues and stuff, and it was causing me to look stupid, as Andrea had said. And I think, and I won't speak for you, but I'll guess, I think the initial thought might be you kind of felt bad for me.
I did,
And then you were like, but I think I can make this joke. And you said, you look stupid. And it made me, I mean, other people would be hurt by that.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
thought it was one of the funniest things that you've ever said, which, you know, it's not saying
funny.
much. But no. And I think just being with our community, and this is basically our worship team's a small group, and being with each other and people praying for me and supporting me, it was, oh my goodness, like I can't even tell you how helpful it was for me to have people around me to be like, hey, let us know how things are going. Let us pray for you. Let us be here for you. And even if it's just to make jokes and like to make me laugh, that's my personality, is like, you know what? I don't want to be sad.
Yeah.
So making me laugh really is like, even if it's at my expense, I think it's hilarious.
Totally.
Do it.
Yeah.
So, just the idea of being with the people that in a situation that I was very frustrated by, had there been people in the room, it wouldn't be the same. So like having this kind of this intimate worship time with these 7 people really was something that I hadn't really experienced, because it's normally like rehearsal and I'm listening to things. I'm like, hey, make sure you play this, and Brennan, stop messing up so much. And you know, just
I do that a lot.
Jerry, you know,
Jerry.
Anyways, I really think there was something that that God really taught me through this whole thing.
Absolutely.
And it's been a kind of a breakthrough as far as like my own understanding of the importance of our team worshiping together.
The original question was the difference, right?
We're talking about private and corporate
private
worship,
and corporate. So I was reading in 2 Chronicles 20, which is really interesting, and it's like Jehoshaphat or someone with a J name. And there are a lot of J names in the Old Testament.
There are.
But it was like they were going to be attacked. And then the first thing that he did was fasted and sought the Lord by himself. And he, like, for the people. And then they met together. And then the part, like that part wasn't super familiar with. I was really familiar with, I think it's like lower in the chapter, but about how when they went out to fight the battle, that the worshipers went first. Like they led the army, which is so cool.
It is cool.
And so I like to think about that when I am leading worship, that like we are leading this army into battle because we have this spiritual battle going on all the time and we don't think about it. But we also need to come to the gathering like ready for that. And it's like the next thing we do after we have worshiped on our own, right? Like we have to be, and of course you don't have to be like clean and perfect and good to come to church.
Yeah.
You can come however
we're all messed
you are.
up.
Yeah, we're all messed up.
You don't got to get cleaned up to take a bath.
But when we are all like, when we
No, I actually really like that.
I was wondering why you guys didn't respond.
I just was quietly appreciating that.
I saw your face. I'm like, what do you think?
You don't have to get cleaned up to take a bath.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. It actually
It's
does.
not a bad analogy,
yeah,
right?
it's kind of nice.
Sorry, keep going, Andrea.
Well, now I don't know what I was saying, and it was so profound.
That was my goal.
But that we like, if we want to stand in our position, right?
Yeah.
Like, and be ready. It's nice if we're like ready when we come together.
Well, I love that. I love that progression of I'm going to get my posture right personally, and then I'm going to go out there and worship with other people who also hopefully have their posture in the right place.
And if they don't, we're here to help each other do it.
Exactly. And I think like there's been so many moments where we've been preparing to go for a worship night, for like a first Wednesday or some, even just a regular Sunday service. And we always pray back here before we go up. And so many people are like, yeah, this is happening right now. This is hard. This is hard. This is hard. And then we pray about it and we go out there and we worship. And that always feels to me like the biggest pushing against that spiritual warfare.
Totally.
Like right off the bat. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like it is a really good way to kind of like have that progression of private worship into corporate worship. Mm-hmm. And that kind of,
they go hand in hand.
Yeah, they go hand in hand. And I just think it works. It's meant to work really well. So
again, God knew what he was doing.
Yeah,
right?
he designed it just as he, knew it would work. So.
Yeah. We talked earlier about the song, Jesus, Son of God, where it says, on the altar of our praise, let there be no higher name. I really feel like in our society today, in our culture today, that there are things that can so easily be put above Christ on our altar of praise. So what do you guys think? What are some modern day examples of idolatry? And possibly what are some things that we might be idolizing that we don't even realize we're idolizing?
I think in the Christian realm, maybe not just the Christian realm, but I think that marriage and family can be an idol, like, and could be even talked about like that's the ultimate goal, like is to get married and then have kids, and then and that really can easily not have anything to do with the Lord, but even though he created it and it's this amazing thing that he created, but I think that we can easily get confused by that being more important than our relationship with him, and putting that like, or if that goes wrong, like if something goes wrong there, then like our whole life is a failure, or, it's like so scary because you've put your trust in that and it was never meant to be in that.
It's hard because when you're, thinking about it again, now we're all married, but even with kids, where I can even notice sometimes where it's like, I'm caring more about my wife and kids than I do about God.
Yeah.
And it's such a hard thing for me to say that something should come before them.
Right.
And it's not, I mean, I do not take that lightly as far as because there's a guilt that comes with that too. That's like, Caitlin and I talk about this all the time, because when there's spurts, everybody has them when you're married. There's spurts where you'll go through where it's just like, we are fighting all the time, arguing about stupid things and it's just like, it starts off this argument and then we're saying things that, why are we saying these things to each other? And it's just this, kind of this overflowing of just negativity within the marriage. And we kind of realize a lot, Caitlin and I both say to each other often in kind of our working everything out and stuff, where it's like, I got to stop putting the pressure on you to make me happy, because you can't. And the only person that can is God. And so if I'm just looking to Caitlin constantly to be like, hey, I need you to give me the joy in my life, then it's like, you're going to fall short and I'm going to be mad at you for it. Like, that's just a terrible cycle to get into. And it's really kind of, to me, when Caitlin says to me, you're not able to make me happy, the first reaction is like, wait, what?
Yeah.
How dare you tell me that I can't make you happy? And it's like, not that I don't make her happy, but like the true joy that she has in her life it comes from God. He's the only one that's able to fill that void.
Yep.
And it's difficult to get to that point sometimes.
Well, and I think that's the always the hardest part is it's really easy. It's very easy to pick out certain things in your life and go, oh, like I can claim that as an idol. Like something where it's like, oh, like my job is my idol, or this hobby is my idol. But it's really hard to look at something that is very good and be like, that can also be my idol.
Yeah.
And mostly, obviously, that comes with marriage, right? And looking at that, being like, like my relationship with my wife can be an idol, and that's really hard, I think, to admit and to kind of like you were saying, just kind of reiterating that.
Especially if you're like somebody like me that's like, I'm such a people pleaser that I'm like, I need to know that you are delighted to be my wife. Like, that I am so good as a husband that you are just unbelievably overwhelmed with appreciation and joy. And it's just like, what if that's not possible?
Right.
Like, she's not going to think that. Like, there's no way. And then I start to really look into like the way that she does have like her attitude is all focused on like, no, it needs to be God. And like the competition part of me that goes like, it's God, not me, really? Like the first reaction. And then I go, oh my gosh, how wonderfully blessed am I that my wife understands that God should come first and in everything, and not
Takes
that
the
she's
pressure
putting the
off.
pressure on me, even though I'm like, no, I can handle the pressure. Like, no, I can't.
I could be the best.
I could be the best. No. I'm so thankful that she understands that, and that it's not something, because that really is a way that we're able to come through a lot of the arguments and disagreements we have, is because we talk about, you know what, I'm putting too much pressure on you. And I want to talk about adversity too. Worshiping through adversity. We talked about worship being on the front lines, worship leaders being on the front lines of going into battle. Let's talk about personally, though, worshiping. Do you feel like it's more difficult or less difficult to worship through adversity when you personally are going through something?
I think it's easier for me to
Yeah,
worship.
I agree.
Versus like when I'm happy and everything's.
I'm the opposite.
Great.
This is one of the reasons I wanted to ask this question.
Yeah.
I think that, kind of like we talked about, because worship can feel so much like you're battling. For me, it's easier to battle when you have a battle to fight, right?
Yeah.
So it's like when you have something that's really hard right now, and you're like, I need Jesus to intervene in this. It's really easy to get up there and be like, all right, time to worship. But then the fault there is then when things are easy, you're like, well, like, yeah, I'll worship. But it's like I really have to be very conscious of like, okay, I haven't been doing that enough. Like, I need to worship. I need to give God what is his and worship.
Yeah.
When it's easy, because it's very easy for me to just be like, oh yeah, things are fine. It's good. And I think a lot of people would agree. I'm really curious to hear what you have to say though.
Yeah. I think in my own experience in my life with adversity, I've really found it more difficult to focus completely on God during those times of struggle, typically just because I'm so focused on how to fix it. And I have this attitude of don't worry, God, I can fix this. I can do this on my own. I can take care of myself. Ultimately, it comes from pride. That's the problem, is that I'm so prideful that I'm even like this with my family and my friends and coworkers, where I try not to inconvenience people, even with people serving. Like, we're setting up all these outdoor speakers right now. Part of me had such a hard time asking people to help me with that because I didn't want to inconvenience anybody. Like, no, I can take care of this on my own. When in reality, it's like, no, I can't take care of this on my own. It would take me 12 hours to set it up and 6 hours to tear it down. Like, I need help with that. And so if we're looking at it as adversity, and I'm struggling with something, I have a really difficult time giving it up to God to be like, look, I'm going to completely surrender this to you. And over the years, I've really felt like it's become easier for me to praise God during the good times, because when things are going well, I'm not stressed out.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about something. I'm not trying to fix something. I'm not focused on a solution for whatever I'm struggling with.
Yeah.
I'm really just at peace. And when things are going well, even if it's something small, like, you know, an hour that I get to hang out with my boys that I wasn't expecting, it's a blessing, and I praise God for that. I thank God for that. I'm able to worship him for that. But when I'm going through something tough, I really do think my pride gets in the way, and it becomes really a struggle for me to surrender it all to God, not out of lack of faith or lack of trust, but more out of just my own pride of thinking, I can take care of this. I can fix this. I have the solution, when really, no, I don't. Like, the relationship that I have with God, I completely understand that God is the one holding me up, that he's carrying me through. And for some reason, I still try to walk on my own through, you know, the dark times, the struggles. And even if it's a small struggle, I still see how many times I've tried to fix something small without God's help, and it just doesn't work. Hey, let's take a quick break. I want to remind you about the Spring Hills Church YouTube channel. You can find all of our most recent church services on there. Also, our Next Gen Ministries has all of their videos on there as well. Preschool, 1st through 4th graders, Club 5-6, junior high and high schoolers. It's great. There's a lot of stuff for your whole family, including Adventure Week. All 5 episodes of Adventure Week are on there, so check that out. And now let's get back to Andrea and Brennan with Beyond the Stage. Are there any like verses or songs that you have that are like go-tos during your times of adversity?
Yes. I have always sung I Surrender All. That one. Do you know that one? Yeah. Because it's just, it just is what always comes to my head. And because I know that I can't do anything, and I hate not being able to do anything and fix something. I really like fixing things.
Mm-hmm.
So I hate to like sit in something that's uncomfortable or sad or whatever. So that song is just, you know, just surrendering.
Give it up.
Yeah, like whatever.
Whatever.
I can't do anything, and God can do everything.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I don't actually think I have anything specific off the top of my head, verse or song wise. I really think I appreciate the variety in the things that we end up playing and singing. And I think a lot of times, for whatever season I'm in, there's usually something like, I think Freedom, that song Freedom that we do, is definitely more of a praise than like a worshipful reverence song. But I think for me, like the oftentimes the chorus of that really comes to mind when I'm thinking about kind of like worship and adversity, kind of having like I don't know, I just think there's something about that song and like the freedom that it's talking about, and how like it doesn't hold back on talking about that freedom. Like, it's very in your face about it.
You know, I'll go through different songs and stuff that are kind of the ones that my go-tos. I have a friend named Phil that, and those that have heard me talk about the song are like, Garett, give it up already, man. We know you love Phil's song. So Phil is a friend of mine that I grew up with. We got to know each other really well in college, and he is a worship leader for Gateway over in Texas now. I think they're in Texas. He's moved around a little bit, but Phil wrote this song. It's called Song of Redemption. It's the one I made you listen to.
It's good. I like it.
And there's a line, you know, he sings through, hallelujah, hallelujah, glorify his name forever. It's Jesus. He basically just like, he's the one that's going to turn this all around. He's the one that can fix it. And it's very creative in the way that he used the words of like, saying that that God wrote a melody with all of our wrongs. And now we're going to sing this song back to him. He's the composer, and we're going to sing all of this back to him in praise. And then it gets to the bridge, and he just sings, you make all things new. And he sings it over and over and over, you make all things new. And then it's, I saw my sin, and you heard a song. And that's what his line is, right? And I'm like, ooh, I love that. I love that line. And so that was ironically, going through that same chunk of time that I was talking about earlier with the kind of struggles that I was going through with some health issues, that was a song that I was listening to all the time. I called Phil, I talked to him about it, and like he's like the sweetest guy too. Like, he's such a nice person. He prayed for me on the phone after I told him about all this stuff, and just he's been such an encouragement to me throughout mostly my adult life, because we've gotten to know each other better. But the verses that I go to, I like to read through the Psalms because David is so up and down.
Yeah.
And it's a roller coaster. And it reminds me of myself because I can be, I react quickly. And I'm going to react harshly one way or the other. Either I'm going to be really like, well, it's over. This is nothing we can do now. I guess it's just over. And then the other thing is just like, no, everything is awesome. This is going to be great. And it's like overly optimistic, right? Yeah. And I go up and down. I love there's David has the psalm where he starts by sharing his problems with God. And he just goes through this like kind of a roller coastery thing of being like, and this is where I'm at. I'm so low. And then it just ends in this like crescendo of praise for God. And I love reading through those psalms that are like that. So I want to talk about distractions. When is it the hardest for you to focus on worshiping God? Like when you find yourself the most distracted, whether it's while we're on stage or in your own personal life?
I could get really distracted when there's something that I'm excited about, and it could be anything that I'm just like, I would almost rather be doing that right now. Which can definitely be like, that's a real thing where it could be like, I recognize like how good worship is and how necessary it is. But there's definitely times when there's something else in my life that I'm like, I'd rather be doing that. The other thing too is when like I'm in school right now, getting near the end, which is great. But if I have a lot of work that I have to do and I'm like, I just don't have time for this, which is not true. But there's so many times where I'll be like, I just don't have time for worship right now. I need to go do something else. And make progress on this. And so that can be, I think, a big distracting point too, is like other important things.
Yeah.
Hugely distracting.
Do you ever have like the kind of attitude? I mean, I specifically work in ministry and I've been full-time ministry for 9 years now. So I have the thought that after a weekend, not anymore, but I used to have this thought like Mondays is, the day off, right? And it would legitimately be taking a day off from God, like not just because it's ministry,
because it's your job.
And so I'm wondering, do you guys, I mean, weekends are long for the worship team. So like, is that ever a feeling where like the weekend's over or a big event, let's say Christmas or something, because that's, you're putting in, the band probably puts in 40 hours over that week of Christmas. And do you ever have that feeling too, where you like accidentally, without even realizing it, you're not just taking a day off to rest, but you're actually taking a day off from God?
I think sometimes when I'm on vacation, I do that.
Yeah.
For sure. Like certain kinds of
You didn't bring God with you.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, yeah, I should still be in tune with that and him and like in the word and, not just laying here on the beach. Although rest is good too. But
yeah, sure.
I think even Sundays sometimes, like, so we get through a weekend of services, I'll be here till about 1 in the afternoon. Yeah. And then after I go home, it's like, cool, I'm done. And then it's like, I don't have to do anymore. I've already worshiped today. Like, I don't need to do anything. And that's like really, it's very easy to feel like I can only worship during certain times. Yeah. And then be like, okay, cool, I'm good now. Like,
clocked out.
Yeah, I've got my punch card punched and I'm good.
What are some threats to worshiping God? So the idea here with this is my own life. The threat to me genuinely worshiping God comes with my desire for everything to be perfect. That's a threat of mine. And if things aren't perfect, I'm only thinking about how to make something perfect. And if that's all I'm thinking about, I'm not worshiping, which is really difficult because there's a lot going on the stage, right? There's things moving parts. And it's like, if this isn't all working right, it can be very distracting for me. I think Brett has that too, where it's like, if it's not perfect, it's very distracting. Yeah. And I have to push that aside because it's a legitimate threat to my worship leading. And if it's not all going right, all of a sudden, I'm not a worship leader anymore. I'm a music leader trying to fix a problem. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. So what do you guys think? What are some threats to worshiping God? And it can be your own or the church.
Like, do you mean like threats? Can you explain that a little bit more?
Wow, I thought I did.
Well, I'm a little slow, I guess.
I mean, we're talking about distractions. So what's the biggest threat to distract you from worshiping God or to distract the church from worshiping God?
Okay. I mean, for me, it's like people are the biggest distraction for me, not like it being perfect, because I know it won't be. I will not do it perfectly. I never will. So I don't really expect that from myself or anyone else. But people, I think I can get distracted by like wanting people to understand this like so badly, and like for them to really get it. That sometimes in my mind, I'm like kind of angry, like more like preachy than, which is okay to like preach a song that I'm leading, but I get like super discouraged if I'm like, people aren't even paying attention. People aren't even worshiping at all.
Why is that dude on his phone?
Yeah. Or like, why are they talking? Like, that's so rude and so distracting. And so it becomes more about people than about worshiping.
Yeah.
So I think that's, for me, the biggest
I know
one.
it's always, the first one's always like a heart posture of like, am I in the right space to do this right now? And a lot of times, kind of like I talked about earlier with the distractions of having other things that I'd rather be doing. Sometimes that's the heart posture that gets in the way of worship, is like, no, I'm just not there. So I'm going through the motions at that point. The other thing is if I like don't practice a song enough and I get there and I'm like, okay, I got to play it now.
You mean when I say, by the way, we're introducing a new song and you got to learn it in 6 minutes?
Yeah, exactly. One of those. Because then it's so much of me focusing on doing things right and hitting the right notes and you know, and sometimes even like, okay, like there's definitely times where I'll play a song and be like, all right, the way I'm playing this right now is kind of boring. How do I make it more interesting?
Yeah.
But that can oftentimes take away from the worship, because I'm just
totally
focusing on how am I playing this? How can I make it better?
Yeah.
And I've just totally lost the fact that I'm doing this for, you know, actual worship. So now it's just, how can I make this sound good or not mess up?
Yeah.
So,
It's tough with I mean, I worked so hard when I was younger to memorize lyrics, and so now it just comes so easily to me. Like, I memorize lyrics pretty well. I mean, don't get me wrong, I mess them up sometimes, and there's a couple songs that I'm like, I get them mixed up, and
I never do that.
Yeah, I know, right? Andrea, the first time we ever sang the song "Jesus You Alone," we did an acoustic version of it, and it was just Andrea and Israel singing and me playing the guitar. It was communion, and I started playing the song. And I'm like, there's also this kind of ongoing thing where you say that I don't ever look at you when which is such a lie.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm not facing you. So like, I'm singing into a microphone, and then like when you're singing is when I'll probably look over at you.
That makes sense.
And then you're not looking at me. So it's not that I don't look at you, but this time specifically, I'm sitting on the stool, I start playing this song, and I get to the point where I'm like, well, she probably should have started singing, you know, sometime here. And I look over at you, and you're staring at me with this, and I wish this was on video right now, and the face you were making was this, like you were communicating with your eyebrows, like there's a problem here. Yeah. And then I just was like, I don't know what's happening. And then you finally put the microphone to the side, and you lean over to me, and you look back at the screen that gives you your lyrics, and you said, I need the lyrics.
I have no idea how this starts.
You had no clue. Like, this song was not going to start until they put it up on the screen. Mm-hmm. The bummer is that the people in the back, they're not facing that screen. No. So they don't know if it's up there or not. So they're just like, why isn't she singing?
A head nod, like,
yo, bro, get the screen moving.
But they're not always paying attention, which is fine. They're doing other things.
The way that you did it, there has not been too many times where I have actually like laughed on stage, but I had to completely put my head down, because I was just like, this is the, like,
we're gonna sit here for a long time.
I'm Jimmy Fallon in a Saturday Night Live skit right now, because I'm gonna break. And it was just like, I had this image in my head where I was like, we could sit here for 6 minutes. And it's just, I don't have a microphone, so it's not like I can start singing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Which sometimes I've done, and it was just like,
you know, as much as those moments can be really awkward, I actually kind of, there's a part of me that loves those moments.
Me too.
Because they're just so real.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like everybody out there is like, yeah, they're gonna play some songs, we're gonna worship, and then something goes horribly wrong, and we're all just like, well,
great.
Like the soundboard freezing, and the only thing working is the microphones and the drums.
Yes.
When we are weak, he is strong. Right?
Yes.
You know, that's what I remind myself when
and then God has a sense of humor. There's no way God's up there being like, I cannot believe that Andrea didn't memorize this song.
Exactly.
I do not feel glorified.
I know.
That is not what's happening. God's probably up there going, look at these idiots. Look at these, like, angels, come here, check this guy out.
They know what they're
doing. Look at this, his voice just cracked.
Well, and it's also good to keep us humble too.
Oh, totally.
Because it's like, hey, you're not some like hot shot. Like, you're totally gonna mess up, and it's gonna be super awkward and hilarious.
Yes, 100%. Yes.
Oh yeah, I accept that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yesterday, I posted on Instagram a little AMA thing,
I'm scared.
and it's an Ask Me Anything. And so I got a bunch of responses. How much time does it take to prepare for the weekend?
I don't really think I spend a ton of time like really focusing on everything before the weekend actually hits. I will take a good hour, maybe hour and a half to like listen to the songs a lot. I'll play them.
I do think this is talking about the technical preparation too, not like the like the worship preparation.
Not the heart.
So
Yeah.
you're on the right
Okay,
track.
right,
I
right.
just didn't want to, because you have to prepare your heart.
Yeah,
too.
so you do prepare your heart. But yeah, technically, it really doesn't take that long. I usually spend about an hour and a half. And then I'll always listen to the songs on the way drive up here.
Right.
And then if there's something that's like you said, new songs can take a little bit longer. So there may be some times when I was like, oh, that's different. I need to spend more time on that.
Yeah, the progression's a little different out of
Yeah.
the ordinary, different time signature.
Yeah, so usually hour and a half.
I don't take that much time. If it's a song I've already done before, which happens a lot, I don't. Sometimes I'll just like think of a more interesting way to sing it, and I try to memorize the lyrics, but they never really stick. But I don't know. It's really because my voice is with me always.
That's
like,
the
I don't
thing about
have to,
vocalists. You can
Mhm.
practice.
so I can practice
whatever.
in the shower, and I could practice in the car, and I can,
Sure.
So
What about weeks that you aren't leading worship? Are you still singing, Andrea? Like, are you still?
I sing all the time. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that was the question: was do you still exercise your voice on weeks you're
yeah.
not leading worship?
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'll give that to you. This wasn't for you, but do you practice your instrument on weeks when you don't play?
Not as much as I should.
Great. Good to know this. Guys, thank you for asking these questions. It's exposing some things that I need to talk to the band about. What's your favorite worship song right now?
Oh, geez. I still think Freedom is my favorite worship song
Okay,
right now.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really bad with favorites.
I'll say one that favorite
really
one that
bad.
for Andrea, we can say this. What's your favorite one to sing right now?
Oh, I love singing King of Kings. There's a lot of words.
Yeah,
I
there's a
love
lot of
singing-
words. And
I
as
love
we know,
singing that one. I really like singing that with Jared too.
Good Grace.
Yeah,
When we do
that
it
was
like
the
a-
Easter.
I love Good Grace.
Good-
yeah,
Good
yeah,
Grace
yeah,
is
yeah,
super
yeah.
answer
right now.
That's-
Good
yeah,
Grace.
I
Good Grace
really
is
love
so
that one
good.
too.
This is for all of us. Do you guys all get along? Let us
All
tell you
the
about
time.
Jerry.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
Jerry.
Jerry.
Let us tell you about Jerry.
Jeez.
No, Jerry.
We
So this
actually
is
love Jerry.
we do. Jerry is
Uncle Jerry.
She's become one. It's odd because he's so old, but he's become one of my best friends. Jerry and I rag on each other constantly, and Brennan, I think, was the victim of feeling very uncomfortable, thinking that we were being very mean to each other. Right?
Yeah,
Was that you?
there was definitely one time where I was like, this is more than it's been in the past. And it was actually just you guys taking it to another level. But I thought
we got to know each
yeah,
other better.
I just thought you guys were being super rude.
We just there is nothing that Jerry can do that will offend me.
Yeah.
And nothing that I can do that will offend him. And I think for the most part, I mean, in this room, honestly, there's not much that you guys are going to do that's going to offend me. It's just not going to happen. I trust you guys that you're not trying to be spiteful. Anyways, let's see. Andrea, this one's for you. Who are your role models?
My mom is definitely one of my role models. Yeah, she's just always been a woman of integrity and somebody that I could trust and ask her pretty much anything. So, yeah.
Cool. I'll skip the next one because we've kind of already covered it with other things we've said. But this one, what's your Enneagram number? This was for everybody.
Oh, that's a good question.
This
Go
might have
first.
been my wife that asked.
I'm a 7 the
Me too.
enthusiast. Oh, what? No,
Me too.
I'm a 9.
That's what
Oh, I thought you
The
were a 2.
No, he's the
Interesting.
peacemaker.
Y'all, if you don't know anything
love
about the
9s.
Enneagram, check it out. It's
Yeah,
fascinating things.
is.
There's an Instagram account called, I think it's Enneagram and Coffee. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
And they put up things that are like situational,
Yeah.
like day at the beach, and this is what your
Oh, I need
personality
to
is.
follow that.
Yeah,
It's
good.
really fun. And you're supposed to basically look at what each one is, and then you self-diagnose what you are.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
what one you relate to. Let's see. Andrea, have you always been a singer, which you already kind of covered?
Yes, yeah.
But and then Brennan, when did you start playing bass, and do you play other instruments?
Yeah, so I started playing bass around, I think I was a freshman in high school, maybe even might have been 8th grade. My dad has always been a worship leader, so I wanted to learn guitar, and it was really funny. He came to me and he's like, you know what, Brennan, you can learn guitar if you want to, but
The
you know
bass
what
is
the world
easier.
really needs is
Oh, yeah.
the world really needs more bassists.
A
He-
good bass.
'cause he
As
was like,
you can see right now, man, you literally are our only
It's
bass.
true.
I
player
know,
right now.
yeah. So and he's like, honestly, Brennan, if you want to play an instrument, like you really should just play the bass. And I was like, all right.
The world has plenty of acoustic guitar players.
So true.
So I took his advice and learned, and yeah, I've loved playing bass, and yeah, I'm always one of those people that people are like, hey, do you want to play? I'm like, yeah, sure.
I love the bass.
It's
I
a great
kind of
instrument.
want to learn how to play them.
Yeah,
it's fun, and especially like when you're good at it.
Yeah,
it's
really fun.
Like having a live bass is so much better because, and actually with a bassist, not one of our guitar players playing, because if you play the bass like a guitarist, you can tell.
Yeah.
Like it's a different feel, and not that like our guitarists can't play bass.
You like feel the bass. I feel like.
But dude, when you take that bass line for a walk and you're just like, all right, this is you just feel it like almost like it's walking up your leg and into your heart, and you're just like, this is.
Wow, that's a great like slogan,
right?
It's walking.
Does this go onto the quote wall? There's a quote wall in the green room, everybody, and everything that's said in the green room that we find humorous gets put up there. Although we're running out of space.
We are.
All right, so this is for mine. Yes, I play other instruments, but primarily the acoustic. The electric I used to play more of, and now I'm a little bit out of practice, so I don't do that a whole lot anymore. And then the bass, I also played bass for a couple years in a band, which was fun, and again, out of practice. Piano, I can play piano. Not very well, but that's about it. Oh, the banjo, I can play the banjo. That one's fun. That's about it. The trumpet, I played, sorry.
Oh my gosh.
Wow, let's see how long this goes.
I played the trumpet when I was a kid. I don't think I could play it anymore, but I played the trumpet when I was a kid.
I tried, when I was in 5th grade, I tried the cornet, and I hated it.
Yeah.
But I wish I had learned, because I love the trumpet.
I'm not a huge fan of playing wind instruments, but I love the sound of like that big band sound. It's so cool.
It's gorgeous.
For everybody, what would your spouse say is your greatest strength and your greatest weakness?
Wow.
Is this heavy?
I don't know. Greatest strength and greatest weakness.
I think I'll start it off because I've had this conversation with Caitlin recently. I think Caitlin would say that one of my greatest strengths is to be able to have fun through times that are not fun times.
Oh, that's a good strength.
To have like a good outlook on not let the terrible. She got in a car accident last week and she's fine, but the deductible, having to pay that, and I'm like, hey, you and the boys are okay. That's what's important to me. And now let's just go home and hang out and play the floor is lava with our kids and enjoy it. And she's like, okay, let's do that, because she's stressed out. And she's shaken up a little bit, and just I think that's one of the things that she would say. She also might say that's my greatest weakness. It's not taking things seriously.
Yeah. I think that maybe he would say my persistence is my greatest strength, but it drives him nuts.
Oh, sure.
Because I just like, if there's something going on and it needs to be addressed, I will just go at it. I'll just keep going at it.
Yeah.
Because because I care enough about people to like, let's resolve this, or like, what's the actual issue, or, like keep digging. But that's not enjoyable.
Yeah. I think Jess would probably say patience for me is my greatest strength. She mentions it a lot. But I think weakness wise, she would probably mention that I can get really lax with like chores and stuff. And so she's like on it. Like she's so good at chores and like getting things done and cleaning, and she loves to clean. And I'm just like, I guess I'll do this. So
see, I like to keep
you're a
things.
9.
Yeah.
I like to keep things consistently clean. But if it gets to the point where it's a little bit like, this is beyond just me picking up real quick, I'd not gonna do it.
Yeah.
Not gonna do it. And Caitlin's really good at that. Okay, this is the last question. This isn't the last question. But I'll make it the last question. Favorite movie, Back to the Future. Thank you for whoever asked what my favorite movie was. Back to the Future forever. You guys want to say your favorite movies?
No, I'm terrible at favorites.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say Back to the Future too, but not like the second, but like also.
That's weird.
I know, but
is it really?
It is.
Oh, I know it's Jess's. I didn't know it was yours.
Well, I think just watching it with Jess has made me love it so much.
Okay.
I love Back to the Future.
Yeah, Back to the Future is amazing. Yeah. It's such a fun movie. Okay, so then this is the last question. It was for Andrea. When and how did singing change from performing to worshiping for you? There was also just a comment. You sing like an angel.
Oh, that's.
No, that one was for me.
You sing like an angel.
No, it was for you.
I think that well, this could be a really long story, so I'll think of a way to say it that's not super long. But
oh, we're out of time.
I think once I was able to lead worship in an environment that was more free, then I was able to worship more, and it was less of a performance. That's a really short way of saying it.
Great.
Yeah.
Wow, good job.
Good answer. Well, that was our very first episode of Beyond the Stage here on the Spring Hills Podcast. We're going to be doing that every few weeks, not just with Andrea and Brennan, but with different members of the worship team and production team, where we can talk about worship, what it means to us personally, and what it means to our church. So that'll be every few weeks. Be sure to check that out. Also, this weekend, we have guest speaker Carl Linnaeus joining us for Church on the Lawn. He's been here a few different times. We know him, we love him. So don't miss out on that. Our normal service times, 5:30 on Saturday, and then Sunday morning at 8:15, 9:30, and 11:15. And then also in just a few days, we will have another Spring Hills podcast episode. And this time, John Knapp joined me in the green room for a one-on-one, and we learned about his story, his family life, where he grew up, his education, and how he got into ministry. It was really great, so don't miss that. All right, well, we hope you have a wonderful week. We will catch you next time on the Spring Hills Podcast.